The child's pulse beat too fast under Hannah Mercer's fingertips. Too weak. Too frantic. The girl's skin burned like iron left too long in the forge. Her lips had already turned pale at the edges. The kind of sick that stole breath and then stole everything else. Can you save her? The man's voice cracked like something inside him had finally broken. Hannah looked up at him. A stranger. A widower. A father holding on by a single thread while the Montana wind screamed against the windows of his cabin. Outside, the world was ice and danger. Inside, death waited for a chance. Hannah swallowed hard. She saw it all in one glance. His raw fear, his helplessness, the way he had opened his home to a woman he'd met only minutes ago because he had no other choice left. She thought of her own husband's last night, his breath rattling, her fingers clutching his hand long after the warmth had gone. She had promised herself she would never do this again, never face another dying heartbeat, never fail again. But some promises were meant to break. Yes, she said softly. I can try. Snow hammered the earth like God had decided to erase the world and start over. Hannah stepped down from a stagecoach just as the driver snapped the reins. Wait, she shouted. He didn't wait. The horses lunged forward. The coach vanished into the white curtain, and her carpetbag landed hard in the icy slush. 2 books and a tin hair comb spilled out. Hannah Mercer stood alone on the frozen edge of Wilder's Gap, a place that looked more like a forgotten outpost than a town. 12 buildings huddled together between mountains that pressed in like old, unforgiving giants. She was 32 years old, cold, alone, and holding a letter that was 4 months too late. Dear Hannah, Wilder's Gap needs a schoolteacher. I found us a place. Cool, mate. We can start over. Evelyn, the sister who had begged her to come west. The sister who no longer answered her letters. The sister whose handwriting Hannah traced with a shaking thumb. Snow stung her face as she picked up her trunk and forced her boots to carry her forward, each step crunching through crusted ice. The wind pushed at her coat, slicing straight through the wool. Wilder's Gap didn't welcome strangers. It barely welcomed its own. The general store was dark. A sign read, "Closed until spring thaw." The church door was locked. Only one building held a glow, the boarding house. A sliver of lamplight in a sea of frozen black. Hannah climbed the steps and knocked. A woman's voice cut through the door. Who's there? Hannah Mercer. I'm looking for lodging. A long silence. Then, are you married? Hannah blinked. No, ma'am. Then I can't help you. Hannah pressed a gloved hand against the door. I can pay. I have money. We're full. The tone made clear she wasn't. Hannah knocked again, harder. My sister, Evelyn Mercer, she lived here. I'm trying to find her. The door cracked open. A sharp-faced woman of 50 peered out, wrapped in a heavy shawl finer than anything Hannah owned. Her eyes were the coldest blue Hannah had ever seen. Evelyn Mercer, the woman said slowly. She died 3 months ago. Hannah's breath stopped. Consumption. We buried her on the ridge above town. Then the door closed. A bolt slid into place. Hannah stood there on the porch, snow settling on her hair, and felt her heart crack open like thin ice beneath a careless boot. Evelyn, her last piece of family, gone. Hannah made it down the steps before her knees buckled. She sat in the snow, trunk beside her, and let the cold seep into her bones. Boston had told her she was too soft-hearted for hospital work after her husband died. Pittsburgh had whispered that a childless widow was unnatural. Philadelphia had dismissed her tears as weakness. Everywhere she went, the doors closed. And now here, where her sister had died alone, snow gathered in her lashes. She thought, I could sit here. I could stay until the cold takes the rest. A door slammed somewhere in the storm. Hannah opened her eyes. Across the street stood a saloon, its windows blazing with lamplight. Laughter rolled across the frozen ground. The sign swung violently in the wind. Sutter's Mercantile Saloon. A place that didn't want her. But it was warm. Hannah didn't ask permission. Not anymore. She dragged her trunk across the street, hauled it up the steps, and pushed through the door. Heat hit her so hard she staggered. Whiskey smoke. Wet wool. Sweat. Tobacco. The smell of men who'd worked their lives into the dirt. 8 men sat around card tables. Every one of them stopped and stared. Hannah stood in her travel-worn green dress, hair half fallen from its pins, snow melting down her sleeves. She must have looked desperate. She was. Behind the bar stood a man carved from granite and hard years. Tall, broad, dark hair cut close, a pale scar slicing through one eyebrow, forearms dusted with flour as though he'd been kneading bread minutes before. His eyes were steel gray and unreadable. "We don't serve women," he said. His voice was low, steady, rough around the edges. "I'm not here for a drink," Hannah replied. A miner snorted. "Then what are you here for, sweetheart?" She ignored him. "I'm looking for Evelyn Mercer." The man behind the bar went still. "You're her sister," he said. "Not a question." "You knew her?" Hannah's voice wavered. "She worked at the boarding house," he said. "I'm sorry. She passed in November." Final. Undeniable. Real. Hannah gripped her trunk. "I came from Boston. I'm a nurse." Evelyn said. She stopped. "What was the point? Is there anywhere I can rent a room?" The man, Sutter, according to the sign, set down the glass he'd been drying. "If Mrs. Weaver turned you out," he said softly, "you're out of options." The drunk miner stood, swaggering toward her. "A nurse, huh? You good with your hands?" Laughter erupted. Hannah lifted her chin. "Sit down before you fall down." "Oh, she's got bite." He reached for her arm. Sutter moved like a storm breaking. 3 strides. Between them, a wall of muscle and quiet fury. "Touch her," Sutter said, "and you're leaving with a broken arm, Cooper." The miner froze, then slunk toward the door. Sutter swept the room with one hard look. "We're closed." "It's barely 8, someone protested. "Closed means closed." No one argued after that. One by one, the men filed out. Silence settled, just the crackle of the stove and the wind clawing at the roof. Sutter turned to her. "You said you're a nurse." "Yes." "What kind?" "War hospital. Virginia. Then Massachusetts General after the war." "Why'd you leave?" "That's not relevant." "It is if you're lying." "I'm not." Something in her voice must have convinced him, because he nodded once. "Can you set a broken bone?" "Yes." "Stop bleeding?" "Yes." "Treat pneumonia?" "It depends." He hesitated. "Then what about rheumatic fever?" Hannah's stomach dropped. "Is someone sick?" "My daughter," he said quietly. "Emma. She's 7. Fever. Joint swelling. She hasn't eaten in 2 days." Hannah knew then why he'd thrown out the miners. Why he hadn't pushed her back into the snow. He was clinging to hope. Any hope. "Where is she?" Hannah whispered. "Upstairs." He took a breath that trembled. "Before I take you, I need to know. Can you help her?" Hannah thought of her husband, Daniel gasping for air as infection claimed him. The helplessness, the screaming inside her heart. She could lie, but she wouldn't. "I don't know," she said honestly, "but I'm her only chance." Sutter stared at her for 5 long seconds. Then he opened the door behind the bar. "Follow me." The upstairs hall was simple but clean. He led her to a small room warmed by a corner stove. A tiny girl lay beneath a pile of quilts, curled on her side, hair damp with sweat. Hannah knelt beside the bed. The child was far too thin, her breathing shallow, her skin dangerously hot. "Emma," Sutter murmured. "This is Hannah. She's here to help." Emma's eyes opened, gray like her father's, but dimmed with pain. "Mama," she whispered. Hannah's heart twisted. "No, sweetheart. Just someone who cares." She checked the girl's chest. The rash, the joint swelling, the fluttering pulse. Rheumatic fever. Severe. She looked up at Sutter. "It's serious. If we don't treat it aggressively," she swallowed hard, "it can be fatal." His face went white. "Tell me what you need." Hannah exhaled. "Willow bark. Honey. Vinegar. Clean cloth. Water. Bed rest. And time." "I'll get it." He disappeared down the stairs. Hannah took Emma's burning hand. "Listen to me, sweetheart," she whispered. "I'm not leaving you. I'm going to do everything I can." Emma blinked weakly. "Promise?" Hannah's voice cracked. "I promise." 18 hours blurred into one endless battle. Willow bark tea. Cool compresses. Honey vinegar syrup. Spoonfuls at a time. Waking Emma when she slipped too deep. Wiping sweat. Holding her while fever dreams shook her tiny body. Sutter came and went silently, bringing whatever Hannah asked for. Near dawn, Emma finally slept peacefully. Hannah checked the pulse. Stronger. Steadier. She's past the worst, Hannah whispered. Sutter sank into a chair and covered his face with his hands. His shoulders trembled. She looked away, giving him privacy. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. But he shook his head. You saved my little girl. Hannah felt something warm unfurl in her chest. Something dangerous. Something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. And then Sutter said the words that changed everything. You're staying. At least 2 weeks. Until Emma's fully healed. Hannah stared at him, living under a man's roof, in a town that already hated her, but Emma needed her, and Hannah had nowhere else to go. 2 weeks, she whispered. Sutter nodded once. I'll bring your trunk upstairs. Hannah looked down at the sleeping child. Emma's breathing was soft now. Steady. Not this time, Hannah murmured. This one lives. Morning crept slowly across Wilder's Gap. Pale light slipping through the frosted windows, as if even the sun hesitated to enter a place this cold. Hannah blinked awake from the wooden chair beside Emma's bed, her neck stiff, her hands cramped from hours of tending to the child. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then she saw Emma's small form curled beneath the quilts. And it all came back. The fever. The nights of helpless sweat and trembling. Sutter's quiet desperation. Her own terrifying resolve. She stood slowly, stretching her aching shoulders, and touched Emma's cheek. Warm, but not burning. A good sign. Emma stirred and blinked up at her with sleep-soft eyes. You stayed, the girl whispered. Hannah's breath caught. Something fragile moved inside her chest. Of course I stayed. Emma reached out a tiny hand. Hannah took it without thinking, feeling the weak squeeze. Does it hurt anywhere? Hannah asked. My legs a little, Emma murmured, and my chest, but not like last night. That told Hannah everything she needed to know. The child was not safe yet, but she was climbing out of the worst of the storm. She gathered new cloths, poured cool water, and gently laid a damp fold across Emma's forehead. The girl relaxed instantly. A soft knock sounded at the door. Hannah turned as Sutter stepped inside. He carried a tray, porridge, water, and a half-burned biscuit so misshapen it must have been his own attempt. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week, beard rough, eyes shadowed. But the moment he saw Emma awake and breathing steady, his shoulders dropped in relief. How's our girl? Hannah nodded toward the bed. Better this morning. The fever broke during the night. Sutter set the tray on a small table, then knelt beside his daughter. The big man's voice softened to something that didn't match his hard exterior. Morning, little bird. Emma smiled faintly. Papa, you made breakfast? His ears turned red. Something like it. Hannah watched him feed Emma slow spoonfuls of porridge. The gentleness in his hands surprised her. For a man who ran a saloon and looked carved from rock, he'd learned tenderness the hard way. Wilder's Gap must have taken nearly everything from him, except this child. Hannah turned away to give them privacy. She moved to the window and looked out at the quiet street. Snow drifts leaned heavy against the wooden buildings. Smoke rose from chimneys. Far off, she heard the crack of an axe splitting firewood. A town like this carried secrets in the wind. Whispers. Harsh judgments. People watching closely and forgiving slowly. She had felt their eyes last night, and she would feel them every day she stayed here. But 2 weeks, that was the promise she made. She wouldn't break it. By mid-morning, the saloon downstairs had come alive again. Men stomped snow from their boots, shaking off the cold and their troubles. Sutter kept them quiet with a single look to remind them a sick child slept above their heads. Hannah stepped into the kitchen, rolling up her sleeves. She wasn't sure whether she should help, but her hands found work without asking permission. She stirred broth on the stove, boiled willow bark for more tea, scrubbed cloths, set aside dishes. Sutter entered, carrying a stack of wood. You don't have to do all that. I know, she said simply. He hesitated, uncertain what to do with a woman who didn't wait for instruction. You're a guest. No, Hannah corrected gently. I'm your daughter's nurse, and she needs a fit household to recover in. He considered this. then nodded, almost grateful. You cook? He asked. Very well. What? My brothers will be in later. They work the freight trail. Have since Pa died. They'll want supper. I'll take care of it. He blinked. You don't even know what they like. I didn't say they'd like it, she said. I said I'd cook. A sound escaped him, half grunt, half laugh. Hannah hadn't expected it. It warmed something in the room that the stove had nothing to do with. What about you? She asked. When's the last time you ate? He shrugged. Emma comes first. Stubborn, she muttered. He squinted. What was that? I said you're hungry, Mr. Sutter. It's Ezra. She paused. Ezra, she repeated. It felt strange on her tongue. Solid, dependable, too big for one syllable. But suited him. He pointed to the pot. That broth smells better than anything I've cooked in months. That isn't a high bar, she replied. He looked offended. I can make biscuits. I noticed, she said dryly. Ezra stared at her for a long beat, and then shook his head. You're trouble, Hannah Mercer, and you're not used to someone telling you the truth. His mouth twitched. Maybe not. A moment passed, quiet, warm, almost easy. Then boots thudded on the stairs. Ezra straightened instantly. Two men stepped inside the kitchen, broad-shouldered, sun-toughened, smelling of cold air and horse sweat. The taller one, brown hair, sharp jaw, grinned. Ezra, we saw your light last night. Everything all right? Ezra answered in a tone that carried weight. Emma's sick. Badly. Hannah's been helping. Both men turned to her. The first tipped his hat. Caleb Sutter. The second, shorter, dirt blonde hair, green eyes, nodded. Luke. Hannah offered a polite nod. Caleb stepped forward. Thank you for helping Emma. She's our whole world. Mine too, Luke added quietly. Hannah softened. She's strong. She'll pull through. The brothers exchanged relieved looks. Caleb leaned closer to Ezra. You owe this woman everything. Ezra's jaw tightened. I know. Heat rose in Hannah's cheeks. She looked away. She didn't help Emma to earn gratitude. She did it because she couldn't bear to lose another life. Not when she had a chance to fight for it. Still, hearing those words stirred something tender inside her. That afternoon, Hannah made her rounds upstairs again. She checked Emma's temperature, washed her skin with cool cloths, and propped her up with pillows so she could breathe easier. Emma watched her with curious eyes. Miss Hannah, she whispered. Yes, dear. Are you going to leave when I'm better? Hannah froze. Emma's small face tightened with worry. Papa says folks always leave. Like, Mama. Hannah sat on the edge of the bed and brushed back the girl's damp hair. I'm here now, she said softly. And I'll be here until you're strong enough to run circles around us all. Emma smiled faintly. She reached out again, her hand warm and fragile. Will you stay for my birthday? It's in a week. Hannah's throat tightened. In another life, before loss carved a hollow inside her, she had wanted children, a full house, a future, but God had closed that door before she could open it. Seeing this girl look up at her with such hope, it shook her. We'll see how strong you're feeling, she answered gently. Emma nodded. Okay. The moment lingered, soft, aching, alive. Hannah checked the girl's pulse again. Slower. Steady. Improving. You're a brave one, Emma Sutter. Emma gave a tiny grin. Papa says that. Too. Your papa is wise. He's lonely, Emma whispered. Hannah blinked. Why do you say that? Sometimes he sits in the kitchen when he thinks I'm asleep, and he looks at Mama's picture for a long time. And then he talks real soft, like he's trying not to cry. Hannah felt her breath catch in her chest. She wanted to say something comforting, something helpful. But Emma's words hung in the air like a truth neither of them had the power to change. Downstairs, Hannah poured herself tea. The saloon was quiet. Ezra had closed early again. He appeared a moment later with an armload of fresh-cut logs, snow melting in his beard. You should rest, she said. So should you. They stared at each other, caught in the middle of an argument neither wanted to start. Ezra broke first. Emma tell you anything today? Yes, Hannah said softly. What did she say? She said you're lonely. Ezra froze. A muscle in his jaw tightened. He looked at the floor, rubbing his thumb along the edge of a wooden table until the grain nearly splintered beneath his touch. Then he spoke. She's too observant for her own good. Children often are. He lifted his eyes. They were raw, unshielded for the first time since she'd met him. My wife died 4 years ago, he said quietly. Barn fire. I tried to get to her. He swallowed. I was too late. Hannah felt her chest ache. I'm sorry, Ezra. He shook his head. I don't talk about it. Not to my brothers. Not to anyone. Then why tell me? His gaze didn't waver. Because you saved the only piece of her I have left. Silence thickened between them. Warm, real, full of something neither of them dared name. Hannah looked away first, folding her hands to keep them steady. Emma is getting stronger, she said. But she'll need care for days. Maybe weeks. Then you'll stay, he said softly. She hesitated. Ezra, once she's well, I can't. He drew closer. Don't decide anything yet. His voice was low, steady, gentle in a way she hadn't expected. Just stay today, he said. We can worry about tomorrow later. Hannah nodded slowly. Just today. Just one step. Just one breath at a time. That night, after Emma settled into a deep sleep, Hannah finally washed up and took a moment alone. The small guest room Ezra had prepared was simple but warm. Quilted bed, pine dresser, a lantern casting soft golden light across the walls. She brushed her hair in front of the small mirror. Behind her own reflection, she could almost see the past. Daniel's pale face, the quiet that followed his last breath, the nights she spent grieving in empty rooms back east. She whispered to her reflection, "You can't start over again." But her voice didn't sound sure, because the truth was harder. Part of her wanted to. Meanwhile, downstairs, Ezra lingered in the kitchen. He set a cup on the table. Saturday, and stared at the steam rising from it. He'd sworn he'd never let another woman into his home. Never risk Emma's heart. Never risk his own. But tonight, the house felt different. Lighter. Warmer. Because Hannah was here. Ezra closed his eyes and whispered the fear he hadn't said out loud in years. Lord, don't let me hope for something I can't have. Just before midnight, a soft cry pulled Hannah from her half-sleep. Emma. She rushed to the child's room, heart pounding. Emma tossed weakly in her blankets. Hannah pressed her palm to the child's forehead. Warm. Too warm again. Ezra, she called. He burst into the room seconds later. What is it? The fever's rising. His face paled. Hannah swallowed. We're not out of danger yet. Ezra's chest rose and fell in short, panic breaths. Hannah steadied her voice. We fight again, she said. Ezra nodded. Tell me what to do. And together, side by side, they prepared for another long night against the fever that refused to let go. The fever rose like a slow-moving storm, creeping back into Emma's small body with a stubbornness that felt cruel. Hannah wiped sweat from the girl's trembling brow, her own heartbeat thudding in her ears. Ezra knelt beside her, fear carved deep into every line of his face. He held Emma's hand as if sheer strength could anchor her to the world. Tell me what to do, he whispered. Hannah dipped a cloth into cool water, wrung it out, and laid it across Emma's chest. Keep changing compresses, she said softly. Every few minutes. Don't let her get chilled, but don't let her burn either. Ezra followed every instruction without question, without hesitation, without a single demand. A rare quality in a man. Hannah poured more willow bark tea into a cup, added honey to soften the bitterness, and lifted Emma gently. Sweetheart, she whispered, I need you awake for a moment. Just long enough to drink. Emma whimpered. Don't want to. I know, but this will help. Ezra brushed a strand of hair from his daughter's damp cheek. Please, little bird, do it for me. The child opened her eyes, a tiny, exhausted glimmer, and took 3 shaky sips before she drifted back towards sleep. Hannah eased her down again. Ezra looked at her, voice tight. Can she beat this? Hannah didn't lie. Not ever. She can. But tonight matters. Then we stay with her, he said. They did, hour after hour. Hannah worked in steady rhythms, calming the fever's climb, coaxing Emma toward comfort. Ezra stayed close, hands trembling when he thought Hannah wasn't looking. No man wore fear so plainly unless he loved fiercely. Outside, the wind howled against the shuttered windows. A wolf cried somewhere on the ridge. Snow hissed against the chimneys. Inside, time softened into something fragile and slow. The fever changed, shifted, settled. When dawn pried its first pale fingers across the sky, Emma's breathing steadied. Hannah felt her knees weaken with relief. Ezra lowered his head, his voice cracking. Thank God. Hannah rested a hand on Emma's shoulder. She's strong. She's fighting. Ezra looked at her, really looked, and for a heartbeat, something deep and unguarded passed between them. Gratitude, fear, hope, and something neither of them dared name. Later that morning, as Emma slept peacefully for the first time in hours, Hannah stepped outside for fresh air. The world glowed, white beneath the rising sun. Snow dusted the rooftops, trees bowed under its weight, and the mountains rose like silent guardians. Hannah pulled her shawl tighter. She felt the cold, but she didn't feel alone. The saloon door opened behind her. Ezra stepped out, breath clouding in front of him. No coat, just a worn work shirt and a man too used to the cold to notice it anymore. You should be resting, he said. I will. You were up all night. So were you. He hesitated, studying her face. You look exhausted. I've handled worse. He gave her a rare, faint smile. I'm starting to believe that. A moment of quiet settled between them. Ezra cleared his throat. Can I show you something? It'll only take a minute. Hannah nodded. He led her to the side of the building, past stacked barrels and frozen crates of winter supplies. Snow crunched beneath their boots. Ezra stopped beside a small wooden shed. Opened the door. Stepped aside. Inside hung a simple wooden cross, smooth, sanded, carved with a single name, Sarah Sutter. Beloved wife and mother, the shed was more shrine than storage. A place protected from the elements. A place of memory. Hannah felt her breath catch. Ezra spoke low, like a man admitting a truth he carried too long. I built this for her the winter after she died. Couldn't stand the thought of snow burying her marker on the ridge. Emma comes here sometimes. Talks to her. Hannah's chest ached. You loved her deeply. Ezra nodded, jaw tightening. Still do. Doesn't matter that she's gone. The wind quieted for a moment, as if giving him space to speak. She deserved a long life. A full one. I couldn't give her that. Hannah stepped closer, her voice soft. Ezra, fire takes fast. Too fast for blame. His eyes, gray as winter steel, turned toward her. Maybe, but the part that survived. I've had to raise her alone, and I don't know if I'm doing it right. You're doing it better than you think, she said. Emma is gentle, brave, smart. Children like that come from a home with love. Ezra swallowed. She could see the guilt warring against gratitude in his expression. He closed the shed door gently, as if tucking away his grief. Thank you for listening, he said. Thank you for trusting me. Another quiet moment passed. Then Ezra nodded toward the saloon. Come inside. You'll freeze out here. By late afternoon, Emma sat propped against pillows, cheeks flushed with returning strength. Hannah fed her warm broth in small spoonfuls. Emma sighed. This tastes better than Papa's. Ezra grumbled from the doorway. My cooking isn't that bad. Hannah didn't look up. It absolutely is. Emma giggled. Ezra pointed at Hannah. Don't encourage her. The faint smile that tugged at his mouth made Hannah's chest warm in a way she didn't expect. After Emma finished eating, Hannah checked her heart rate again. The rhythm was steadier now, less frantic. You're healing, she whispered. Emma looked up at her with sleepy eyes. Can you stay tonight too? Hannah brushed her thumb gently over the child's knuckles. I'll be right here. Emma's face softened. Her breathing slowed. Within minutes, she drifted back to sleep, peacefully this time. Ezra stood in the doorway, watching them. She trusts you, he murmured. I trust her too. Hannah turned, expecting Ezra to leave. He didn't. Instead, he stepped closer, slowly, carefully, like a man approaching something too fragile to touch. Hannah, he said quietly. She straightened. His voice held something she hadn't heard before. Uncertainty. I know you're planning to leave once she's well. That was the agreement. Yes, but I want you to know something. She waited. Ezra exhaled, the kind of breath a man only releases when words cost him something. I like having you here. Hannah's heart stumbled. He continued, eyes locked with hers. You make this house warmer, quieter, more peaceful. Emma, she's smiling again, eating again, and I haven't felt this kind of calm since Sarah died. Her throat tightened. Ezra, you don't have to say anything, he whispered. I just needed you to know. Silence stretched between them, filled with things neither dared speak aloud. Hannah looked back at Emma, tiny, fragile, safe. Then at Ezra, solid, scarred, hopeful in a way that hurt to see. She forced her voice steady. We take one day at a time. For Emma's sake. Ezra nodded slowly. One day at a time. He stepped back, but not before his hand brushed the edge of hers. Barely a touch, but enough to send a warm shock through her arm. Then he left the room. Hannah sat there long after, breathing slowly, trying to steady the storm in her own chest. She wasn't supposed to feel anything here. She wasn't supposed to start over. She wasn't supposed to care. But Emma's tiny fingers had wrapped around her heart, and Ezra's quiet confession had shaken something loose inside her. Something she had locked away since the day her husband died. Hope. The storm broke at dusk. Not the weather. Hannah could handle weather. She'd marched through Civil War battlefields in rain, so cold it felt like shrapnel on her skin. She'd survived winters in Pennsylvania mills and summers in overcrowded Easter hospitals. She knew weather, but she didn't know what to do when trouble took the shape of a man. And trouble had a name in Silver Creek. Mr. Carter Hale, the richest man in town, the mine owner, and the kind of villain who hid cruelty behind polished boots and a smile sharp enough to cut. The knock at the door. Hannah was in the kitchen preparing a tonic for Emma's lingering chest tightness when a fist pounded on the saloon door hard enough to rattle the hinges. Ezra stiffened. Hannah froze mid-stir. Emma looked up from her little chalkboard. Another thunderous knock. Ezra exhaled, slow and controlled, the way he always did when preparing for something unpleasant, and stepped forward. Stay here, he murmured to Hannah, but Hannah didn't stay. She followed him, standing close enough to grab him if things went wrong. Ezra opened the door. Carter Hale stood on the porch, flanked by two mine enforcers, big men with thick coats and thicker fists. Hale looked Ezra up and down with a smooth, calculated smile. Evening, Fletcher. Heard your nurse finally pulled your girl through. Shame she isn't more professional. His eyes flicked to Hannah. Mocking. Measuring. Ezra's jaw tightened. State your business. Hale stepped inside without invitation. Hannah's pulse quickened. Something about him felt wrong. Too charming. Too confident. Too sure that men like him always got their way. And in towns like this, they usually did. The accusation. Hale's voice rang through the saloon as if he owned it. I'm here because you're a nurse. He nodded toward Hannah. Went to the miners' cabins last week without permission. She treated an injured man. My injured man. Hannah straightened. He would have died if I hadn't. I'm aware. Hale gave her a slow smile. Which brings me to the problem. He's claiming you set his broken leg wrong. Hannah blinked. That's impossible. The splint was clean and stable. His pulse. You charge for your services, do you not? Hale interrupted. I don't turn away anyone who can't pay. He pounced. So you do charge. Ezra stepped between them. What are you implying? Hale pulled a folded paper from his coat. This is a formal complaint filed with the Territorial Board of Health. He handed it to Ezra. And this is a summons. Your nurse is to stand before the council next month. Ezra read the document. His face went cold. This says she's practicing medicine without a license. Hale spread his arms as if explaining something obvious. Well, she is. I'm a nurse, Hannah snapped. A trained, certified nurse. Certified where? Hale asked lazily. Boston? Philadelphia? Does this little mountain town look like we care what papers you have from back east? Hannah felt ice seep in her spine. This wasn't about an injured miner. This was about power. Control. Her. Ezra saw it too. You did this, Ezra said sharply. You bribed that miner. You're coming after her because she helped the men you treat like livestock. Hale didn't bother denying it. You're smart, Fletcher. His smile sharpened. Smart enough to know how this works. Then Hale's eyes drifted to Emma, sitting quietly on the stairs, watching. You've got a sweet little girl, he said softly. Shame if anything happened to her care when the nurse gets thrown out of town. Ezra moved so fast Hannah barely saw it. He grabbed Hale by the front of his coat and slammed him against the wall. You threaten my daughter again, he growled, and you'll leave this saloon in a box. Hale laughed. Actually laughed. My men are outside. You lay a hand on me. You'll rot in territorial prison. Ezra didn't release him. Hannah placed a hand on Ezra's arm. Gently, firmly. Let him go, she whispered. Ezra's breath shook with fury. But he listened. He stepped back. Hale straightened his coat. Good choice. Now my offer. Ezra's eyes narrowed. What offer? Hale gestured between them. You want the girl safe? You want Miss Hannah to keep her reputation intact? Then she will work for me. At the mine. Exclusively. Hannah's stomach twisted. He wasn't asking for a nurse. He wanted control. Over her time. Her movements. Her livelihood. Her life. Ezra stepped forward. She's not for hire. Hale's smile grew cruel. She's if I say she is. Hannah spoke before she could stop herself. You think you control this town because you control the mine. But you don't control me. The words landed like a slap. Hale's smile vanished. He leaned in, voice dropping to a whisper dripping with venom. You poor little widow. You think this man can protect you? You think anyone will choose you over the mine? Over me? Hannah kept her voice steady, even though her heart raced like a trapped bird. I didn't survive collar awards and battlefields just to be bullied by a man who's never seen. Real blood. Silence fell. Ezra's chest rose slowly, dangerous as a coiled animal. Hale smirked. We'll see about that. He turned to leave, but paused in the doorway. 1 month, he said coldly. Then the council decides if she stays or swings. He left. His men followed. The door shut behind them, and the wind outside suddenly sounded like a warning. The aftermath. Ezra paced the length of the saloon, fists clenched, breath ragged. He's not going to stop. No, Hannah whispered. He isn't. He wants you gone. He wants control. Ezra stopped pacing, looked at her, eyes fierce and afraid. Hannah, you can't face him alone. I'm not alone. She stepped closer, close enough to feel his breath, close enough to see the crack in his armor. Ezra Fletcher, steady, quiet, unshakable, was terrified. For Emma, he murmured. For you. I can fight anything, but I can't fight the law. Hannah rested her hand on his chest, over his pounding heart. Then we fight smarter, she said softly. Not louder. Ezra swallowed. Tell me how. She met his eyes. I need to see the injured miner. If he lies under oath, I can prove it. Ezra frowned. But if Hale finds out, he will, she said. But that's the risk. Ezra's jaw tightened. Hannah, yes. Ezra reached up and cupped her cheek. His voice was barely above a whisper. If anything happens to you because of me, because of us, I'll never forgive myself. Hannah's chest tightened. She placed her hand over his. Nothing's going to happen to me. You don't know that. No, she said. But I know this. I'm not running. Ezra stared at her for a long moment. Then he pulled her into a fierce, desperate embrace. Hannah held him just as tightly, because she knew with bone-deep certainty, that this was only the beginning of a war she never meant to start. A war she would win, or die trying. The morning after Carter Hale's threat, the sky over Redfern Ridge burned orange and gold, but the light felt wrong. Too still, too sharp, as if the world was waiting for something heavy to fall. Hannah felt at the moment she stepped outside. A tension in the wind, a quiet in the trees, a sense that nothing in her life would ever be the same again. Because today, she and Ezra would do something dangerous. Didn't bray, just blinked at them tiredly. Hannah didn't slow. Ezra stepped ahead of her anyway. Protective, ever present, always. He knocked on the door once, firm but not threatening. A pause. Then the door opened a crack. Carl Denner, the injured miner, stood in the doorway. Mid-30s, broad shoulders, thick beard, a man who dug half his life into mountain rock. But his face was terror. When Carl saw Hannah behind Ezra, his entire body tensed like a trapped animal. Hannah, he whispered, voice catching. You shouldn't be here. Ezra stepped forward. We're not here to debate. We're here for the truth. Carl swallowed hard. His eyes flicked over the trees, the ridge, the path behind them, as if expecting someone to appear, or listening for footsteps. Let us in, Hannah said softly. Please. Something in her tone, gentle but unyielding, broke him. He opened the door. Inside, the cabin was dim and small. Just one room, a cot, a stove, a table with a half-eaten biscuit on a tin plate. The smell of damp earth clung to the walls. Carl limped to the chair near the stove and sank into it with a wince. Hannah knelt in front of him. Take off the splint, she asked quietly. Carl hesitated, then obeyed. She examined his leg carefully, fingers moving with practiced, gentle precision. Ezra leaned against the wall, watching like a hawk. After a long moment, Hannah straightened. It healed perfectly. Carl squeezed his eyes shut. Ezra folded his arms. So why'd you tell Hale it didn't? Carl's voice cracked. Because Hale said if I didn't lie, my brother wouldn't get his wages this month. Hannah froze. Ezra's mouth dropped open in disgust. He threatened your family's income? Carl nodded miserably. My brother's got 4 kids. Hale knows it. I didn't have a choice. Hannah swallowed, her throat tight. You always have a choice. Carl met her eyes. This wasn't about your splint. This wasn't about me. Hale's scared of you, miss. Carl rubbed a hand over his face. He's scared you, and Ezra are giving this town something he can't control. Hope. Ezra's jaw flexed. Hannah's breath stilled. Carl leaned forward, voice low. Hale ain't after you because you're a nurse. He's after you because you're changing things. What things? Hannah whispered. Carl's eyes softened with something almost like gratitude. You're making people believe they deserve better. The air shifted. A heavy understanding fell between them. Ezra moved to stand behind Hannah, hands on her shoulders, not pulling, not pushing, just grounding her. Carl looked at Ezra next. You need to be careful. Hale's not done. He's planning something worse. Ezra's shoulders stiffened. What? Carl swallowed. I heard him talking in the mine office. He said if he couldn't scare you quiet, he'd break the town itself. Ow! Hannah asked. Carl hesitated, looked down at his splinted leg. He was talking about the ridge supports, the west shaft. He said something about showing everyone how desperate things bring desperate measures. And then he laughed. Ezra stepped forward sharply. The west shaft? That's the oldest part of the mine. If he weakens that, it'll collapse. Carl's voice trembled. And if a collapse hits the vent tunnel, half the mine will go down with it. And the men inside, Hannah whispered. Carl nodded. Ezra's face went pale. This isn't about me anymore, he murmured. This is about the whole town. It's worse, Carl said. He said he'd make it happen when Ezra Fletcher is blamed for it. A silence fell, so thick it felt suffocating. Hannah's pulse spiked. Blamed, she breathed. Carl nodded. I saw a forged ledger on Hale's desk. Looked like orders from you, Ezra. Instructions to cut corners on timber support. Enough to get you arrested for murder. Ezra's arms dropped to his sides. What's he doing? Hannah whispered. Ezra answered without blinking. He's building a rope for my neck. The choice. They left the cabin quickly. Too quickly. Fear stalked their steps. Ezra didn't speak until they were halfway down the ridge. When he finally did, his voice was quiet, controlled, deadly calm. Hale's going to collapse that shaft. Yes. And he'll pin it on me. Yes. Ezra stopped walking. He turned to face Hannah with a look that made her heart twist. Hannah, you need to get Emma and leave town. She stared at him. What? Take Emma. Take whatever we have. Leave Red Fern Ridge before Hale comes for me. I'm not going anywhere. Ezra's voice sharpened. Hannah. No, Ezra took her by the arms. Listen to me. If he destroys the mine, the town will turn on me. On us. I won't let Emma lose another parent. You're not going to die. You can't promise that. And you can't order me to run, she shot back. Ezra closed his eyes, breath shaking. Hannah, please. She softened. Gently. She lifted his chin until he looked at her. I came here lost, broken, running from everything. You and Emma gave me a reason to breathe again. Her voice thickened. And I will not abandon either of you when danger shows its face. Ezra's eyes glistened, though he blinked the tears away fiercely. Then we have to move fast, he whispered. Yes, she said. We need witnesses. Proof. Or Hale will ruin us. We'll get it. People won't believe us unless someone stands with us. Someone will. Ezra exhaled. Hannah smiled weakly. Ezra, you forget something. What? She stepped closer, pressing a hand to his chest, steady, warm, certain. You're not alone anymore. Ezra swallowed. Then he pulled her into his arms, quick, fierce, heart-aching. Hannah rested her forehead against his. We expose him, she whispered. We protect Emma. We protect the minors. We protect each other. Ezra nodded against her hair. And if we fail, Hannah didn't flinch, then we fail together. The gathering storm. They reached town as the sun dipped behind the ridge, shadows stretching long across Main Street. The saloon lights glowed faintly. Emma waited on the porch, small hands shoved deep in her coat sleeves. When she saw them, she ran toward them. Papa? Hannah? You're back. Hannah scooped her up, holding her tight enough. Emma squeaked. Ezra brushed a hand over his daughter's hair, then glanced around the street. Shutters closed. Lamps dimmed. People walking quickly, heads down. Fear was spreading. Hale had done that. Hannah straightened, Emma still clinging to her. We need allies, she said quietly. Ezra nodded. The minister. The storekeeper. Sarah. Anyone Hale's hurt. We need evidence. We need witnesses. We need courage, Hannah added. Ezra's eyes softened. That we have. For a long moment, the three of them stood together in the fading light. Ezra, Hannah, Emma, bound not by fear but by choice. By love larger than danger. By a family forming not through blood but through battle. The wind howled through town like a warning. But Hannah didn't flinch. She'd faced death before. Pain, loss, war. And she would face this too. Not for duty, not for survival, but for the people she loved more than life itself. Ezra took her hand. Emma held her other. Together, they stepped inside as night crept over the ridge. Because tomorrow would be war. Night settled over Red Fern Ridge like a warning. The mountains vanished into darkness. The wind shoved against the saloon shutters. Lanterns flickered along the street, dim as dying breaths. Inside the saloon, Ezra paced like a hunted man. Hannah watched him, Emma curled against her side on the sofa, her little head resting on Hannah's arm. The child had fallen asleep midway through asking if monsters were real. Hannah smoothed a hand over Emma's soft hair. Ezra stopped, pacing. She okay? Yes, Hannah whispered. The fever hasn't returned. Ezra exhaled a breath that trembled. Good. But his eyes kept drifting to the windows. The door. The street outside. He was expecting trouble. Hannah stood carefully so she wouldn't wake Emma and stepped closer to him. Sit, she whispered. Ezra stiffened. I can't. You must. You're wearing yourself down. He shook his head. Hannah, if Hale makes his move tonight, then we'll face it. She placed her hand over his heart. His breath hitched. We face everything together now. Remember? Ezra swallowed hard. Then slowly he sat. Hannah sat beside him. Not touching, but close enough that the warmth between them felt alive. For a moment, they simply breathed in the quiet. Outside, a distant crack echoed across the ridge. Ezra's head snapped up. You hear that? Hannah nodded. The mine. He stood. It's happening. They ran into the night. Snow stung their faces. The wind cut through their coats. Lanterns swayed wildly as miners burst from nearby cabins. Men shouted. Women cried from doorways. The mountain rumbled again, low, monstrous, shaking the earth beneath them. Ezra grabbed a lantern in Hannah's hand. Stay close. I'm right here. But the closer they got to the mine entrance, the clearer the truth became. The west shaft was collapsing, just as Carl warned. Smoke, dust, and splintered ice blew out of the tunnel mouth. A roar that seemed to come from the center of the earth rolled through the night. Men stumbled from the mine, coughing, limping, shouting names. My boy's still in there. Get the ropes. Stretcher. Someone find a stretcher. Hannah scanned the injured. Broken arms. Crushed ribs. burns from falling lanterns, shock in every pair of eyes. The training she thought she'd buried surged up like fire. "Ezra," she said, voice steady, calm, absolute. "I need water, blankets, and space. Move the wounded toward the sleds." Ezra didn't hesitate. "You heard her. Clear the crates. Get lanterns on the ground." Hannah knelt beside a bleeding man and yanked off her gloves. No hesitation, no fear, only action. A group of miners formed around her instinctively, trusting her, following her lead. "Miss, my leg, hold still. It hurts, I know. Stay with me. You're safe." Ezra rushed past carrying blankets and bandages from a saloon. "Hannah, right here," she said, not looking up as she wrapped a wound. He set everything down and grabbed her shoulders gently. "Carl's missing. He's inside." Hannah froze. Inside? In the west shaft? Ezra nodded. He went back to warn the men before the cave-in. He didn't get out. Hannah's throat tightened. Ezra looked her dead in the eyes. "I'm going in." She grabbed his coat. "No. Ezra, you'll die." He stepped closer. "And if I don't go, he will." Smoke drifted from the tunnel mouth. A support beam groaned and fell with a crash. Hannah's voice broke. "Please." Ezra cupped her cheek with one soot-blackened hand. "I love you." Her breath vanished. Ezra squeezed her hand once, fierce and trembling. Then he ran into the collapsing mine. Every second after that was agony. Hannah stitched wounds with shaking hands. She pushed cloths into bleeding gashes. She checked pulses, tied splints, calmed men shaking with shock. But her eyes kept drifting to the mine entrance. Smoke, dust, silhouettes moving, screams echoing from the tunnels. Ezra was in there. Ezra, the man whose strength steadied her. The father whose love held Emma together. The widower who'd finally opened his heart again. The man who'd said he loved her. A sound split her thoughts, a beam snapping deep inside the mountain. Hannah flinched hard enough to drop the needle. Her heart pounded like a drum against her ribs. "Ma'am," a miner asked softly. "You're bleeding." She looked down. Her hand was cut. She didn't even feel it. Another man, pale, trembling, grabbed her arm. "Miss, is he coming out?" Hannah forced her voice to steady. "He will." But she didn't know. She didn't know at all. And that truth cut deeper than any wound. The minutes crawled. Finally, the tunnel spit out a coughing, stumbling man covered in dust. "Lights," someone shouted. "Get the lights." Hannah rushed forward. But it wasn't Ezra. It was Carl, barely conscious, dragged by two miners. Hannah dropped to her knees beside him. Carl, look at me." Carl wheezed. "Easy, Ezra. He got me out. Where is he?" she begged. Carl's voice was thin, breaking. He turned back. Beam fell, trapped. Hannah's stomach pitched. "Trapped where?" Carl shook his head, tears mixing with soot. "He went back for Jim Dorsey. I told him it was useless. Where's Jim now?" Carl's breath rattled. "Dead." Hannah's world went quiet. Ezra had gone back for a man already gone. "Show me where," she whispered. But Carl slipped unconscious. Hannah staggered back to her feet, heart pounding so violently she could hardly breathe. She scanned the tunnel mouth. No Ezra. No silhouette. No familiar shape rushing toward her. Her chest tightened until she thought she might break apart. She whispered his name into the cold. Ezra, then a sound. A roar. A collapse so loud the earth shook beneath her boots. A cloud of dust exploded from the mine entrance, so thick the lanterns flickered and nearly died. Men stumbled back, covering their mouths. Hannah didn't move. She stared into the choking dust, into the dark, into the mouth of death. "Ezra," she whispered. The dust swirled, shifted, cleared, just enough to reveal a figure stumbling from the darkness, carrying another man over his shoulder. Ezra. Hannah's knees buckled. He emerged coughing, staggering, blood dripping from his forehead. His clothes were torn, covered in soot. His breathing was ragged. But he was alive. Alive. The man he carried, Jim Dorsey, hung limp. Dead. Ezra set the body down gently, then wavered, nearly collapsing. Hannah reached him first. She caught his face in her hands. "You idiot," she breathed, voice cracking. You brave, stupid, wonderful man. Ezra leaned into her touch for one heartbeat, one fragile second, before his legs gave out and he dropped to his knees. Hannah fell with him, arms wrapping around him. He buried his face in her shoulder. She felt his tears hot against her neck. I thought I lost you, she whispered. Ezra's voice broke. You almost did. Hours later, after the injured were cared for, after the dead were covered, after the mountain finally quieted, Hannah and Ezra stood before the town council. The hall was packed. Miners with bandaged arms, widows with hollow eyes, town elders, men who'd once feared Hale, women who'd once whispered about Hannah. Now they looked to her with something like respect. Hope. The councilman cleared his throat. This meeting is for the purpose of determining the truth behind the West Shaft collapse and the accusations brought by Mr. Carter Hale against Miss Hannah Mercer. Hale stood at the back, arms crossed, smiling like a snake. Hannah didn't look at him. She looked at Carl, who sat with his leg freshly wrapped. Carl struggled to stand. Counsel, he said hoarsely, I lied. Under orders. From Hale. Gasps filled the hall. Carl continued, voice shaking. Hale forced me to make false claims against Miss Mercer, and he forged entries in Ezra Fletcher's ledger to blame him for the collapse. Hale scoffed. This is absurd. Ezra stepped forward. Quiet. Steady. Deadly calm. I risked my life to pull your miners out of that shaft, and they'll all tell you the same truth. Hale weakened those supports himself. Miners nodded. One spoke. Hannah saved a dozen of us tonight. She kept us alive. Another. If she leaves this town, half of us won't make it through winter. The council turned to Hannah. Miss Mercer, what do you wish to say? Hannah met Hale's eyes. I came to Red Fern Ridge because I'd lost everything. But this town, this family, gave me something back. I treated your sick. I helped. You're dying. I did not break the law. I did not harm a soul. But some men, she looked at Hale, fear what they cannot control. Silence. Then, we stand with her, Ezra said. And the entire room rose with him. Carter Hale's smile died. The councilman struck the gavel. Charges dismissed. Carter Hale, you are hereby removed from any authority over mine operations pending investigation. Hale's face went red as coals. He stormed out of the hall. But Hannah didn't watch him leave. She looked at Ezra. Ezra looked at her. Emma squeezed between them and wrapped an arm around each. Are we safe now? She whispered. Hannah kissed the top of her head. Yes, sweetheart, we are. Ezra placed his hand over Hannah's. The whole room blurred away. It was only them. Hannah, Ezra said softly, voice shaking, don't leave. Please stay with us. Her throat tightened. Her heart ached. She looked at Emma, at Ezra, at the life she never expected. And she whispered, yes, I'm staying. Ezra pulled her into his arms. Hannah closed her eyes. She had traveled halfway across the country, searching for a place to belong. She found it here, in a snowy mountain town that tried to break her, in a child who held her hand, in a man who risked everything to keep his people alive. She found her home, her family, her heart, and she wasn't running anymore. If you felt this tale in your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Wild West Emotional Tales, where every story rides through the dust, the danger, and the kind of love that never dies. See you in the next tale, partner.